All right. Hi, guys. Welcome to another Ultimate Edge webinar series. We're going to talk about something fun today and very appropriate to the market. I'm going to pop over here. Okay, guys, we're going to talk about mortgage management equals wealth creation. That's what I've titled this, and you'll see for very good reasons here in a minute. We're kind of in a particular time in the economic environment right now that makes this conversation really, really appropriate. What I mean by that is today we're going to take a look at the economic environment, and then I'm going to introduce you to something we call the blended household rate, which is appropriate to understand what your total interest cost is for your household. I'll show you that to you in just a minute here. And then also explore a tool we use that helps you kind of optimize your refinancing or your purchase decisions so you can see what the total cost is and maybe compare that with some other options. And then I'm going to give you an offer at the end to take some action that might be beneficial to you. Let's get started in that. According to the Federal Reserve, this was from a study they did for the Center for Microeconomic Data. You can see, and this was Q3, so fairly recently. There is now $1 trillion of credit card debt with people in the United States. That is, I believe, an all-time record for credit card debt. Credit card debt is not inexpensive, and we tend to kind of lose track of that when we have our credit cards. We're making payments on a monthly basis, and that interest just gets paid all the time, and we don't really pay attention. So that's one of the issues, I would say, with the economic environment we have right now. However, at the same time, according to Jessica Dickler with CNBC's where I got this, and she got it from the St. Louis Federal Reserve, as you can see there, there is approximately $30 trillion of home equity in the market right now. Home equity is the equity that's in a home. That would be the difference between the appraised value of the home and anything that's owed on the home. So if your home doesn't have any mortgage, you have 100% equity, and whatever the value of your home is your equity. If you have a $500,000 home and you have a $300,000 mortgage, you have $200,000 worth of equity there. And the question you might want to ask yourself is that a good place to keep that in equity in the home, or should I use that for a better purpose? Here's a graph that shows you what's going on with home equity. Notice this goes way back to the 1990s. Notice that it has increased dramatically since 2008. Those little gray vertical bars that you see on the screen there represent recessions. And you can see that home equity still kept increasing with the exception of the 2008. I call it an anomaly recession. We call it the Great Recession for a reason. It really plummeted home equity because it plummeted home prices, and naturally equity went down. But it recovered, as real estate always does, and it's continued an upward trend. That's a combination of two things, obviously. One of them is the increasing value of homes over time. They've slowed down. They were increasing at 8, 10, 15%, depending on your market. Now the expectation, I think last year was around 4 to 5%, and it'll continue probably at that pace. If you look way, way back and just annualize the real estate appreciation through good times and bad times, it's about a 4 to 4.5, maybe 5% appreciation over time. And that's probably the market that we're going to be in now. The graph you see on the screen right now also is relevant to our conversation here with what's going on with the real estate market and the economy as a whole. And that is that rates are coming down. As we do this particular presentation, which is the last day of January of 2024, you can see that rates started coming down. They peaked in the third quarter and right into the start of the fourth quarter, maybe of 2023. There was quite the jump there, as you can see, and they've come down quite significantly. The predictions are, you can see there's Fannie Mae, the Mortgage Bankers Association, and Wells Fargo are all predicting rates to come down to around the 6-something% range, and they're there right now, guys, and we're in the first quarter of 2024. I have some economists that I follow that predict they're even going to come down a little faster than that. I should do a whole nother webinar on that. There's some very compelling reasons that they're talking about that's possibly going to happen. Okay, so that's the environment. Now let's talk about something called blended interest rate. You have your mortgage. In this particular case on this graph, as you can see, the very top row shows the mortgage amount of $300,000 with a 3.75% rate. This is somebody that refinanced or purchased a home probably about 2 years ago, 2.5, when rates were really, really quite low, maybe 3 years. So this mortgage has been in place for 2 to 3 years. The payment on that is around $1,435, as you can see from the right-hand column. And the annual interest expense at 3.75% is that $11,250 that you see. But in addition to that, this household has other debt, has a car loan in this particular case. That's the balance you see, $23,000. And with an interest rate of 6%, the annual interest expense in the car loan isn't that much, $1,380, but it has credit card debt. And so this is a hypothetical situation. You can see that I've used credit card debt through 4 different cards there with their balances that you see and the rates that you see. And I would surmise, I would submit to you that those rates are probably reasonable to even conservative with some credit cards. Many credit cards are in the 30% range, the rate they're charging. And we tend to lose track of that. And my small story for you is we had some work done in a car recently. My daughter was at the shop. She asked me if I wanted to pay for the whole thing over the phone. I said, no. Then they said that we have a free for a certain period of time financing. And I said, no problem. I'll get it paid off within that time. And then they texted me this little payment, a very small payment. I got used to just paying easily and kind of lost track of that account. And then me and my wife, when we were doing a little mortgage chat or our economic chat for our household, we're looking at that and said, holy schmoly, the interest rate on that little account from that car repair was 80%. I said, whoa. And it obviously had gone past the period when it was free, kicked into the rate, and was completely unaware of it because I was in the habit of paying it with that simple little text. We paid it off. We looked back. We paid, I'm embarrassed to say, $300 of interest on that little tiny car repair. So my point with that is it gets away from all of us, even me, when I try to keep track of our credit card debt and get it paid off and everything. And one more thing, I thought at one time that this might be a fairly high credit card debt for the average user, but I have clients coming to me who I've known for years, and they had their low interest rate that we gave them, and they're looking at their credit card debt now, and they don't have 4 credit cards. Some of my clients have 20 credit cards. Some have 12 credit cards. Some have 10 or 15. And there's 10,000 here and 5,000 there and so on. And I would submit to you that the total amount of credit card debt you see there, $71,000, is not that abnormal, especially when you get in the habit, like I was in, of simply making those payments. So you can take those rates there and you can see what the total interest expense is. Now, to calculate a blended interest rate in a household, what we do is we take a look at all of those cards, accounts, and we blend them together. So we total up the total debt. So you can see the total debt in this case is $394,500. The total annual interest expense, which is a very simple calculation, is simply the interest rate times the principal balance, and that'll tell you what the annual interest expense is. The total on there is $28,000. We subtract the car, as I did in this particular case. The total debt is $371,500. Total annual interest expense on that is the $26,890 that you see. You simply divide that interest expense by the principal amount owed, and you get a blended rate, in this case, of 7.24%. So these people love their 3.75% mortgage rate. We call it rate locked in the industry right now. They're afraid to do it, not afraid, they don't want to do anything because they don't want to disturb that 3.75% rate. I get it. But what's happened is we all have credit card debt, and now it's increased, and they're actually paying way more blended household, 7.24% if we don't include the car. And it's obviously much higher. So it would be a good opportunity to take advantage of doing something else. Let's look at the something else. Okay, guys, what this is an analysis tool we use with all of our clients, which shows a bunch of things. And I'm going to walk you through it here. So in this particular case, if you remember, the credit card debt and everything was $371,000 something. We could potentially do a refinance loan of $381,000. The rate that you see here is 6.5% that I have on the screen. And the APR associated with that, 6.634%, is today's rates as of January 31st that we're recording this particular webinar. Given that particular payment, rate, and mortgage amount, the total payment, this is going to be misleading here because I have something going on. What I did is I set the total payment up higher than that. The total payment actually on that loan, okay, guys, what I have on the screen is a little misleading to you because I've included something which I'm going to show you in just a minute here. That $3,108 is not the total payment. If I take my handy dandy HP calculator on a $381,000 loan amount at 6.5%. The total payment is actually $2,408. And if you remember, the total payment with everything included was $3,000 and some dollars with the credit cards included in there. So what we've done is we've included the credit cards in and paid those off. And the actual mortgage payment now is $2,408, which is approximately. So guys, actually the difference in the payment between the payments with the credit cards included in the mortgage payment is almost $1,000. I've reduced it by $700 a month here. Here's what we did. If we click on this software and pop over to something called the reinvestment strategy, we can play with this a little bit. We see that the total principal and interest payment here is $2,400 a month. But given that there's $700 what I used change in the payment here, that's the difference between the total payments that we just paid off and the new mortgage payment. We can choose to reinvest that $700 back into the mortgage payment, which is what I did on this first screen here, the left-hand column. And notice they're going to pay this loan off now in 16.83 years. So let's assume that that loan was originated 3 years ago, which means, and it's a 30-year fixed loan, which means it has 27 years left on the payment there with the very low rate. They're going to make 27 payments of that, but instead they refinance, free up $700 or more per month in cash flow and apply that $700 a month right back to the mortgage and turn it into a 17-year mortgage instead and save 10 years or so on the mortgage. Alternatively, they could have another strategy here. Maybe the best thing is to pay down the mortgage. Maybe what they want to do instead, we'll use that higher interest rate of 6.99%, is take $350 of the savings and apply it back to the mortgage and end up with a mortgage that gets paid off in 21 years. They still save over where they're currently at in paying that mortgage. And let's say they take the rest of it, the other $350, and they put that into an investment account, which earns 6% annually. And I would suggest to you that if you don't know where you can get that, I have some great financial planners that can show you where you can get a safe 6% annual yield on your investment accounts. And they put $350 in there. So they start with $1,000. That's the base that you see right there. That's because on the refinance, we gave them a little over $1,000 out. They put that in. They also put $350 a month in. And in 15 years, which is what this analysis looks at, they have $104,000 sitting in an investment account. So it's liquidity. So we have two different borrowers here. Borrower one on the left-hand side simply wanted to pay off their mortgage as quick as they could. They achieved that in just a little less than 17 years. Borrower two says, you know what, I want to pay it off quicker than I would have before, but let's take the extra, let's put it over to the side in a 6% account. And they achieved over 15 years, $104,000 worth of equity, liquidity in another account. Good choices for both of these borrowers, I submit to you. And I also submit that you want to have this information at your fingertips when you're making decisions of this nature. So let's pop back to the first screen, and you'll notice also a couple other things that I want to show you. So whether you're doing a purchase scenario, whether you're doing a refinance, whatever, it makes sense to know your total cost over time, and we'll show you that with this particular analysis as well. What this analysis does is it compares the two payment options, the two rate options, one being 6.5% and the other being 6.99%. 6.5%, you can see at the top here, costs just a little less, little over 3/4 of a point today. And 6.99%, you actually get a credit today toward your closing costs, which lowers the costs of the other costs. And hence, we don't need as much mortgage here. There's a $377,000 loan there versus $381,000. The borrowers are each getting back a little over $1,000. This one has a lower mortgage amount because the costs are lower and they don't need as much mortgage to pay the cost and pay off the credit cards and all of that. So the question you ask yourself is, how long am I going to have my mortgage? What are my goals with my other financial goals? Do I want to pay more toward my mortgage or pay more toward something else? Do I want to raise more liquidity and put something in an account over the side or put it all to the mortgage? Those kinds of questions. One other question is, how do these two mortgages compare? And how long am I going to have the mortgage? I think there's a good argument to state that a lot of people are going to be refinancing out of the loans they've got in the last 1 to 1.5 years with the higher rates into lower rates sometime within the next 24 months. So if you own that mortgage for 24 months, which is the best loan? Well, if you look at the the right-hand side of the screen here, you can see over a 24-month period that the lower interest rate actually saves money there. Not much, but $574. So if you knew you were going to pay off your loan within 2 years, you would want to know what the exact point is and grab the rate that made most sense for you potentially. I can tell you that the lowest interest rate wins out over time, and that's shown on the bottom right here. Here's the interest expense for 15 years comparing these two mortgages. Notice that the 6.5%, you're paying $243,000 versus $306,000 with a 6.9% rate. The point being, if you know you're going to keep your loan for a long time, or you believe so, you'll take typically the lower rate. It'll cost less over time. If you believe you're going to pay off your mortgage for some reason, you're going to move because that's your corporate policy with your relocation. You think rates are going to come down in the next 2 years, and you want to be prepared for a refinance, then the rate you choose and the total cost is going to vary depending on those choices. This is what this analysis and our mortgage chat for you is going to do for you. The point of all of this conversation is, guys, you have options, and they're good options in this case. You could potentially, by the way, put a home equity line of credit on the home. You don't have to disturb that 3.75% rate if you don't want to. Maybe you simply want to consolidate your debt. And I do want to make that point here. You can go to a good credit union. We do home equity lines of credit. They're less expensive. They're a variable rate, and it's a higher rate than a fixed rate. And so there may be options one way or the other you want to consider there, but you could do that. Also, potentially, depending on where you're at, you might just be deciding to move. Maybe you want to downsize and move down to a different home. Maybe the home you have, the kids are moved out now and it's a little larger than you need. Maybe you want to move up. You got more kids than you had 2 or 3 years ago. You need some more bedrooms. You want to move up. Maybe you want to purchase an investment property. All those things are valid reasons for having the mortgage checkup. There's probably no good reason not to have a mortgage checkup. Our goal with you when we chat with you is simply to give you information so that you can make an informed decision. And the better the knowledge that you have, the more information you have that's real and accurate, the better the decisions you will make. And I've heard this argument in the media recently about maybe people shouldn't be purchasing home. Maybe they said rent is just a better option. And honestly, for some people, it certainly could be a better option. But the journalist that I heard talk about this, but simply said that most people, all people almost, he made it sound, should be renting because it's just better than buying a house that's appreciating and it's hard to pay for. But let me be clear, you're going to pay somebody's mortgage one way or the other, unless they have a free and clear house. And that's your landlord if you're renting. If they have a mortgage on that property, that's the mortgage you're paying for them. Or potentially you're going to be paying your own mortgage. With rates coming down, and that's why this discussion is so fruitful right now for different people, now may be the time to purchase properties. Maybe it's an investment property you've been wanting to buy because you want to create more wealth with real estate. It's a great, invigorating discussion I love to have with our clients. Maybe you're simply a first-time home buyer and you want to take a look at rent versus own. And we have the software that we talked to you about there will show you the exact costs compared with that. It's almost universally agreed owning real estate is a great wealth creation tool. If you're a renter, it might be the right lifestyle for you, and there's nothing wrong with that, I submit. You don't have the problems of house repairs and all of that. You may not be able to afford homes in your area. That could be true. If you are able to get into a home and you get a mortgage payment that works for you and your budget, then it's a great wealth creation tool for lots of good reasons, which we can talk about. So you probably have some decisions to make, I would say. Time for action. First of all, set some time aside to just consider what your goals are, your financial goals, what you want to do with the mortgage, what you want to do if you're moving up, all of the discussions I just talked about a little bit earlier, and just review for yourself kind of what you think you want to do. Okay, guys, so review, check out what your blended household rate is, and I would say that it's time to give us a call. We can create and we can help you implement what we call the mortgage by design strategy as presented on this slide right here. That means we want to design a strategy with your overall goals in mind, where you want for wealth creation or debt consolidation or get out of debt completely, whatever works for you. to come up with a strategy that makes the best sense for you. It may be debt consolidation, it may not. It may be just accelerating your debt and doing the snowball approach that Dave Ramsey talks about and pay off that credit card as quick as you can. But as I mentioned, having the knowledge available is what happens if you do refinance and how quickly can you do it. And what if you apply these extra payments to this or that certainly helps in that decision. Simply give a call, reach out with an email, whatever is easiest for you. We're happy to chat with you and let you know what options may be available to you. Thanks so much.